Welcome back to another episode of RecTalk. I'm your host, Nitin Sharma, the founder of RecTools.io, which is the largest directory of recruitment supply chain in the world, free to access for you guys to find the right type of businesses and outsource services for your recruitment agency. One of those is Emplomind, which my guest today is Lee Godwin, who's here to talk about kind of breaking down the barriers within sort of mental health support. You are the COO of Emplomind?
Yeah, COO. Maybe we'll find out what that means today.
In a minute.
Maybe I don't know sometimes, so we'll try and explore that a little bit today, right?
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Look, appreciate you taking the time to come on to because it's such an important topic.
Thank you.
And I think we were speaking off camera. Like there is a lot out there about mental health and sort of the barriers and the support that's out there, but there also seems to be an increasing amount of kind of rise in the statistics that feed into those things, right?
Yeah,
so
100%.
I think let's start by give us a bit of background on you, Lee. How did you end up in this world? Because you're ex kind of recruitment, right? How do you end up in well-being? Because those two things don't go hand in hand.
Correct. Yeah. Well, thanks for that, and look, really great to be on here today. So thanks very much for having me along. And you're completely right. So my background was 15 years in recruitment specific technology. So I'm talking about the CRMs, the access groups, the bullhorns of this world, right? That was kind of my background. And really enjoy supporting the recruitment space. That's probably why we're talking today. That's why we do a lot of the work in the space that we do, because I just love the industry, right? But how did I move from bullhorn, access, CRMs, right, into wellbeing support? Really good question. Well, I'll share something, kind of a little bit of a personal story with you now, actually. And actually, maybe I'll share something I've not shared before, actually. So a bit of a unique one here. I've shared
RecTalk exclusive.
a RecTalk exclusive. So I've shared some of my story before around kind of my immediate family, right? I'll take that a step further. My dad actually lost his mum to suicide.
Wow.
And you probably noticed there straight away, I've not referred to her as my nan, right? And this is because this actually happened to my dad at a very young age, right? So I never met my nan, my dad's mum. So that was really, without me knowing it, probably the start of this journey, because actually we know that suicide has a real ripple effect. And appreciate we've started off with a pretty strong subject.
No, it's
here,
good.
right?
No, yeah. But that's what's needed. You've got to talk about it, right?
Exactly. So I've spent a lot of time in recent years kind of, really unpacking a lot of that. And even more recently, and probably the unique moment though, was in November 2019 when my sister actually looked to take her life. So that's when I talk about this kind of ripple effect across families, right? But what was unique about that moment was after the event, my sister actually approached me to share and shared her intent around her actions. And that was kind of the moment for me where I really stepped back and reflected on how was I supporting my sister, right? How are we doing as a family? And what support was available to her? And yeah, I then fell down the rabbit hole, to be honest with you. I walked into a charity called Papyrus that specialise in suicide prevention in young adults.
Right.
That's anyone between the age of 8 and under 35, right?
Okay.
And I walked in and broke down to an individual in there. First time I'd spoken to anyone outside of my wife and my mum, to be honest with you, about our family situation. And yeah, broke down, come out the other side though as what they call a champion for Papyrus. So that was really the start where I started.
That's how they recruit you.
That's how they recruited me. Exactly right.
Big mental health, recruit people they're vulnerable. That's what happens.
But exactly right, and that's a big part of the role.
Is that a bad thing? Yeah.
That's a big part of the role, right? Is to raise that awareness. So from doing the work with Papyrus, I started to understand some of the challenges, right, and the data points around mental health and specifically suicide.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
What with your sister contemplating suicide, why did that kind of impact you in the way that it did? And not to sound like harsh, but why did that become your problem?
So the reason it impacted me this time
Okay.
was because it was that moment of realization when she shared verbally with me her intent, right? Talking directly to me. Previously, I probably found that this as, and I'll be really honest, to go again, head buried in the sand, emotions like anger, attention seeking, all those kind of bits, which actually sometimes I still even have today, right? Those kind of feelings and emotions. That's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the reason it impacted me so much this time around was because of that conversation, that human one-to-one conversation and the sharing of intent around actions.
Okay. And then, okay, yeah, fair. Because the reason I asked that is because my take on kind of mental health and stuff is that everybody has some level of kind of baggage and issues that they're carrying, right? And I genuinely believe that the reason most people, and men in particular, but most people, because my wife probably falls into this category too, when we openly talk about this sort of stuff, most people refuse or refrain from talking about it because nobody really gives a shit. As bad as that sounds, like nobody really gives a shit. Like it's sort of like, okay, yeah, cool, but you know, everyone's dealing with shit. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, don't attribute to kind of malice what you can attribute to sort of, you know, it sounds so horrible because I'm like, that sounds really harsh and blunt, but most people I speak to about this sort of stuff and have spoken to about it, we always seem to end on that point, which is the fact at the end of the day, like everyone's got shit to deal with, and your problem is not really my problem.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
I completely understand what you mean. And actually, sometimes when I speak to organizations, right, about this topic, sometimes I sense that feeling as well, right? And the way I try and look at this with people as well is we need to get more proactive. We need to get more preventative when it comes to mental health. And the way I liken this in many respects is, and recruitment businesses will know about this probably reasonably well. Let's think about cybersecurity, because this was the situation with me and being reactive, right? We've got to a point.
Yeah, you reacted to something.
Yeah, we hadn't had enough conversations. We hadn't been proactive in our approaches around support, right? For whatever reason, lots of reasons, right? Knowledge, understanding, access to support, whatever it might be. Yeah, lots of reasons. But we then got to the point of crisis. Yeah, and that's the bit you don't want to get to. You really don't want to get to. So you've got to put in the work, right, before that. You've got to be doing things daily. So when I speak to businesses, I sometimes liken this to cybersecurity.
I think it's a really good analogy. Yeah, I can see where you're going with it. Absolutely.
You know, how many businesses have put especially years ago, from an IT perspective, put that risk of being held to ransom, systems hijacked. Oh, okay, that won't happen to me.
And
that won't happen to me.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, it does happen, and you're in crisis mode. Yeah, you're in crisis mode. You are having to, work in a very reactive fashion, fast. You're panicking. You're having to throw money at the situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the same when it comes to mental health and well-being. When we get to crisis mode, that's when we're actually throwing the most resource and therefore the most money at the issue. Whereas we actually need to be getting ahead of that and thinking in preventative fashion.
But in terms of preventative measures for mental health, how do you prevent something that has no singular root cause?
So it's really, really difficult. Lots of different initiatives need to be looked at, right? We need to be doing a lot more work around education. Yeah. Education for everyone at all different ages. Yeah. We need to be looking at work in the community. Much more work in the community. When it comes to the workplace, there's also a lot we can be doing in the workplace immediately today that doesn't need huge amounts of money thrown at it.
No.
We can be looking at job roles. Yeah. We can be looking at employee resource groups, right? So that's little pockets and groups of people, certain demographics that are talking about their day-to-day challenges, unique to them. So that might be your group of women returning to work. mums in the workplace, they can have a platform and an area to talk and explore and work out what's needed to support them better in the workplace. Yeah, so lots of different initiatives that can be done at very minimal cost in a preventative fashion.
Realistically, is that something that businesses, I mean, because you're in this space, right? And obviously there's an adaptation of this at the moment through the company you work for and through the variety of kind of, what did you call them, frenemies rather than competitors, right?
Yeah, lots of frenemies out there. Yeah, good term.
There's obviously an increase in adaptation of this sort of stuff, but the cynic in me would argue, is that not just a tick box exercise to be able to go, yeah, we do that as well?
Some organisations probably do.
You know, as bad as that sounds, it kind of, because I've worked big corporate, I've worked smaller businesses, and there is an element of kind of things that sometimes done just to kind of go, yeah, we do that.
100%. There will be some organisations out there that probably are doing it as a tick box exercise, but it can also be reasonably easy to kind of sniff those organisations out, right? But what I would say is I'm seeing and having more and more conversations every day with organisations that genuinely, and this is in the recruitment space, right, as well. And this isn't just exclusive to recruitment businesses with, 100 heads. No, this is down to
smaller.
And actually, sometimes it can be those 5-10 head recruitment businesses that are really focused on, putting in the relevant support tools for their people.
What do you think is driving that?
I think the driver behind that is a combination of, sometimes it's more and more individuals demonstrating and sharing their lived experiences, right? Because actually this, as you mentioned earlier, this does impact us all every day.
Yeah.
And more people are now talking about it and slowly moving towards action, right? So that's great. But there is also a demand, a necessity coming in from younger demographics coming into the workplace as well, right? It's no longer for that. This is like almost a non-negotiable from younger demographics, that actually we want to go into an environment and a workplace that, we really want to get on board with their mission.
Yeah.
We're purpose-driven individuals. We want to get on board with their mission. We want to make sure that those organisations are creating healthy culture and healthy culture. I don't know what word I come up with there, but healthy cultures, right? And having really diverse, and actually I think the diversity of the workplace is something else that is driving this, right? Really driving it.
I think this is the positive byproduct of the world that we're in now, because social media gets a massive rap, right? The younger millennials and Gen Z get a bad rap for kind of their attitude towards things and their lack of engagement and stuff and whatever. I think that what they're driving at the moment is phenomenal and fascinating, because they're not asked about climbing a corporate ladder. They're not bought into corporate culture. Corporate America is kind of looking sort of down a barrel at the moment, because there are so many people that are kind of like, I don't give a shit about that. I don't care. Show me your vision, show me your mission. What are you ethically? What are you doing? What's your approach towards climate? What's your approach to ethical sales and ethical sourcing of materials and that kind of thing? And these guys are now kind of filtering into the workplace and demanding. Absolutely, yeah, you're right. Demanding. No. If I need a mental health day, I'm taking a mental health day. I have seen people above me and older than me, be parents, uncles, aunties, grandparents, destroy themselves for a business, to then at the end of it be either let go or be presented with a watch for their service. See you later, off you go. And so it's fascinating to see that. It's also good to know that actually there are companies now that are taking it on board. One of the things I wanted to ask you though about was what's your opinion on the subcategorization within mental health? So there's a lot that gets talked about men's mental health, right? And when we talk about, and sort of, how do you feel about that? Categorizing different types of people within their sort of specific demographic or demographic. Yeah.
I think in some ways it's really important, right? So broad brush, we've all got mental health challenges. But then we've all got our own unique mental health challenges. But there can be, and I always explain kind of my situation as, I might have a similar but different experience to someone else, because we all process things in a different way.
That's right.
But when it comes to those demographics, it can be really, really beneficial to have groups. And this is where I spoke about the kind of employee resource groups earlier, right? Because actually, when it comes to opening up about certain topics, we still need to break down some of those barriers and stigmas that exist, right? So it might be easier for me as a working mum, for example, returning to the workplace, to be able to communicate, engage, and resonate with individuals with that lived, shared experience, right?
Contrast to that, though.
Yeah.
You sharing that experience, as in that example of that working mum coming back to the workplace, with a demographic of people who don't have that lived shared experience, is a great educational opportunity, though.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I get to walk away from that actually being like, shit, I never thought about that. My mum probably went through that. My sister probably went through that. My aunties probably went through that. Yeah. And moving forward, I will now be more aware of that. Do you know what I mean?
100%. So we need to do the work to, which is happening, elevate as we're seeing these different topics through these different demographics. But when it comes to the individual needing support at that moment in time, potentially, these groups are really, really powerful for the individual. Yeah. Another great way to think about that is when we think about culture, religion, right? Suicide is, again, a really good example of something that we have to be really mindful of.
Yeah.
Even the language, right?
Yeah.
Because within
committing and
in certain religions, right, it really is still a real taboo topic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
cultures and religions, absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, having those demographics and being able to engage with someone that understands that in that moment of needing support is really important. But then giving the awareness to as many people as possible, so we come at it with a level of empathy and understanding, is really important as well. So you've got to tackle both areas.
Yeah. No, fair. Okay, well, let's talk about social media then and the impact of that on mental health, right? Because
one of my favourite topics. As we're sitting here on a podcast on social.
Exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. Before we do that, let's have a quick word from partners at RecTools, Zodec. I'm just going to shut that door because I tell these guys every time, do not slam the door. Because my mic's still up. This door is how I handle it, so it's almost impossible.
No, we don't get out.
Honestly, ridiculous. Cool, that's better. Right, so social media.
Yeah.
Go on then. Let's dive into that.
First of all,
are you a fan or not?
First of all, I'll say, am I a fan? My answer to that is I really struggle with it.
Okay.
I really struggle with it, right? And what I mean by that is there's lots of good that can come from social media. The fact that I'm sat here in front of you today is one of those.
This is going to go out to thousands of people. Yeah.
Right? One of the good outcomes. But I also believe it is one of the biggest challenges we have in society that is impacting our well-being. And especially my biggest fear is we spoke earlier, you've got young children. I'm a dad of two young girls.
Yeah,
right?
Both of us are, yeah.
My biggest fear is them growing up with social media and digital, but specifically social media, and how impactful I see it day in, day out, even with my young girls today being.
Yeah. I get that. But then we take it to the prevention piece rather than the firefighting piece, right? Yeah. I've also seen multiple examples of people who would have historically during our time struggled in school to make friends.
Yeah.
And would have spent their entire lives very lonely.
Yeah.
Who absolutely create this little world for themselves on social media, which with like-minded individuals and people that they can do you know what I mean? Like,
build up their tribe with almost.
I mean,
right?
yeah, exactly, right? Look, I married my childhood sweetheart, right?
Yeah.
And I laugh all the time with her and sort of say, do you know there's like 6 billion people in the world. Yeah. There's no way that my soulmate just so happened to go to the same school as me.
Yeah.
There is a perfect person for me out there. I'm just never going to find her. So like, yeah. And I'm like, and the same applies for you, right? And I'm like, look, but we've got to accept that you go within the confines of the world you're in. And at that time, I mean, you cast your mind back to when we were in school. You wouldn't even play or acknowledge people from another school, right? There was like this rivalry thing. Whereas now you've got these teenagers that are like, I've got a friend in Venice, I've got a friend in Australia, I've got a friend here. And they consider them actual friends. Our friends were the ones we play football with or rough football with.
Went down the road and knocked, so you coming out now. Yeah.
That's it, right? Yeah. And so I think there is an element, though, of our generation is still very kind of stabilizers on, wrapped in cotton wool with these, because it impacted our mental health, right? Because when we see things on social media, we feel a certain way. We assume that the generation who have grown up with this as normality also feel that way. But actually, a lot of the people that I've spoken to that are Gen Z and are very involved in social media and stuff are very aware that that's not the true picture. This person doesn't look like that all the time. There's filters, there's this, there's that, and brilliant, they know all the tricks. Yeah. So we'll see somebody's like Instagram and be like, how the fuck is this person on holiday like for that long? That's ridiculous. And then I'll speak to one of my Gen Z staff and they'll go, because they photo dump. She probably went for a weekend, but she spends the next month posting the pictures and tagging herself in that location. 100%. And because that, and then she's like, that's what they do. That's just what people do. And that level of awareness and acceptance, I think, is going to be that preventative piece that we talk about. Because they're growing up with this and they know all the tricks of the trade. And they're like, it's all bollocks. We know it's all bollocks. Yeah. We like to do it. We participate. We'll chuck a little like and a little blah, blah, blah. But we know that's not real, Yeah. And I think, and that's how I'm raising my kids, is to accept and understand that this ain't the real world, Your kids are like similar age to mine. They probably watch YouTube and watch the Roma and whoever and the kids with these big fancy parties and like all on Adley or whatever it is now, right?
Adley,
yeah. So they watch all of that sort of stuff, but they always look at me and go, and I'll go, Angela, that's not going to be your birthday party. I know, I'm not on YouTube, Dad. I know that, and I'm like, okay, good. We're on the right track here.
So this is great, right? And so a lot of this responsibility comes onto us.
That's it. Yeah.
Right? As parents, adults, demonstrating those learnt experiences, right? So something I've worked really hard on as well is making sure setting up healthy habits and balance.
Yeah.
And this is the thing we need to work really hard on with our children, our younger generations, is those healthy habits and balance. That's what we need to instill because, as I said earlier, there's lots of good to social media, but there is this huge risk, right? Where if our younger people don't build out those healthy habits and balance, then it is very dangerous, right? It's interesting. I had a day off yesterday, right? And I went to Southend-on-Sea,
nice,
good old Essex. And we were on the 2p machines. And I was sitting there thinking, as my girls were, I don't know, just getting through my wallet basically with 2p's, right? Which is strange to have 2p's in today's world as well, right? Have actual currency. But I was watching them and I was having to tell them, look, slow down. Constantly just feeding the machine with 2p's.
Yeah.
So actually, it then got me thinking, those slot machines, those 2p machines, were our version of digital currency. Were our version of those likes.
Yeah.
That some individuals are sitting on their phone or their tablet or their device and waiting for.
That gratification piece, that instant gratification piece.
Gratification.
Yeah.
And we all know the challenges around addiction with gambling, the 2p machines, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It can be without that balance, without the support systems, without our communities, all those bits, education, all the kind of preventative stuff we've spoken about today.
Yeah.
Individuals, adults and young people, but especially our young people, where they're growing up with it as their tool of gratification, can easily fall into unhealthy habits.
Right?
So you're completely right. There is lots of positives, but we as a society need to do a much better job at educating and helping give balance to young people. Make sure they're also getting back outside into nature, right?
Yeah. No, I get that, but I do genuinely worry though that I think we part our anxieties and our kind of feelings and emotions about things like social media onto our children. I think there's a lot of that we're dumping on them and creating almost an issue that may or may not be there because time will only tell, right?
Yeah. I think there's some interesting stats, and there was an article I read the other week that it's proven that the earlier a young child gets access to a mobile or digital device, increases their chance of poor well-being.
So I can believe that.
So again, there is, and it's not it's about that balance, and that's our job. And I think part of the challenge is there are, unfortunately, also many adults out there, parents, grandparents, people supporting young people that need the support as well in terms of education, right? To help them have the knowledge, the skill sets to instill those healthy behaviours. Right? We've got to get some of the parents who are in their phones 24 hours a day with kids sat there, get them to look up from their screens.
I hate that. So when you're out out with the kids and stuff, and you see, if there's a child with a tablet at a dinner table in a restaurant, that bugs the life out of me. And equally, by contrast, if the parents are there on their phones and the kids are just sat there colouring or whatever, it's like, why are you even here?
Those times for communication, right?
That's right. These kids are going to grow up like that, and then you're going to wish you spent the right time with them, and again, but feeds into mental health, though, right? Because we're really harsh on ourselves, especially in recruitment. We're very, very harsh on ourselves. What do you think the trend? It's all well and good being more aware of mental health. It's all also very kind of positive that there are now places and things that people can turn to for support. But what do you think are the main causes of a rise in mental health issues within the recruitment world?
Yeah, so actually I think there's a number of issues, but we are seeing good positive change here, right? I think, and we'll talk about recruitment, but actually this is some of the challenges around sales-based roles, right, in particular as well, right? But what we see in some of the recruitment challenges now as well, and this is not just about the individuals, but it's about organisations adapting to change, right? We're in a period of time where we're probably going through some of the most amount of change in the world of work that we've seen for God knows how long.
At least 3 decades.
Yeah, right? So what we have to remember is businesses and recruitment businesses and the owners, founders of those recruitment businesses are grappling with lots of change. So the leaders at the top are also struggling with what does their business look like now? We used to have a really great engine where we had Monday to Friday, our recruiters in the office, right, with their power hours, doing their tasks, etc., whatever it might be. Whereas now we've got this hybrid working, right, or remote first, and all these. So we've got leaders of the businesses trying to work out what their business looks like in today's world. Right.
Agree.
We've then got individuals. And recruitment is really great for bringing in young talent, right? And that's we spoke about why I love recruitment. It's because I love that young talent that can come into recruitment, that diverse talent.
Fresh ideas.
Exactly right. But they're coming into organisations that are going through so much change, and if they're coming into their first roles as grads, for example, they're coming into organisations that are a little bit at odds with what's going on. And therefore their first experience in the workplace is a really challenging one.
Civil war.
For them to navigate. And it's not, I don't think it's a fault of either party. It's this moment of time that we're in, right? So communication, expectation setting then becomes a really big challenge and something that needs to be really on point. to help onboard these people. That communication and expectation setting. And I think historically in recruitment, if we think about KPIs, etc., sometimes we had pretty aggressive KPIs in recruitment, and okay. But I think also we need to be thinking about, are the KPIs that we're setting actually achievable, right? Are these KPIs actually achievable in terms of what we articulate in part of our recruitment and onboarding process, and how we then support them to deliver those?
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree with that. I think it's a funny one because work from home is a big topic in itself, right? And I think it does lend hand in hand with the arguments for and against in terms of mental health. I always come back to the point of, it amazes me how many business owners attributed past success to people being office bound. Because it's sort of like, if you genuinely think the only reason you are no longer successful as a business is because people are working from home now, your problems lie everywhere else except for where you're looking, right?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I struggle to work from home. This week I've worked from home, and it's hard to stay motivated and not get distracted. But whilst equally at the same time, I also found myself working a lot longer. I work in short bursts, and actually the bursts were a lot longer, which then I was like just exhausted by the end of the day after I've done the pickups and I've done the drop-offs and I've put the kids to bed, and I'm like, Jesus, right, okay, I've still got work to do now.
Yeah.
And I felt the need to pick up the laptop and carry on. Yeah. Whereas actually, if the laptop was still at the office like it used to be, then I wouldn't have had the need to do that, right? And so, yeah, it's a funny one. I'm not pro work from home, but I'm certainly not one of these that attributes business failure to the business being a remote business, because there are examples of many businesses that have that work from anywhere kind of mentality.
I think we've got to get to the point where we're much better at understanding each individual's unique needs, their ebbs and flows, right?
I spoke about exactly that with Chris O'Connell in terms of when you're setting KPIs, there shouldn't be blanket KPIs. You know, you talk about kind of your mental health of your staff. If you're sitting down and you've got somebody who's very good at candidate sourcing, but really doesn't enjoy or isn't just very good at business development calls, and they're on a desk which lends itself to more candidate heavy work, let them do candidate heavy work. What do you care about? Essentially, when it's all said and done, what you care about is the
outcomes,
the financials, right?
Yeah.
And if this person acting and behaving in this manner brings those outcomes and that result, their KPIs should be different to the one over there who's incredibly good at opening new doors and very good at client relationship management, but actually hates the candidate management side of things, because that's where they fall over. You know, you can train, develop them and stuff, but if you're looking for a short-term solution to that long-term problem, you've got to put the people in the right places and KPI them with the right KPIs.
100%. And this ties in so nicely with mental health, right? Because again, we've got to work out what works for our people, right? What works for you won't work for me, right? So, but then comes the challenge as well. Whilst these organisations, we're all navigating this, lots of change that we're all adapting to, right? How do I? That sounds really great, Lee, and I get it, that I need to know how each of my individuals best works. But my goodness, how do I manage those unique individuals, all of those unique individuals? How do I manage a team that are geographically diverse, right? Which is so lots of benefits. We've got that is diverse culturally, that is diverse in terms of age demographics. All of these play a part in that wonderful tapestry of our unique needs of mental health, right? So me as like a senior within the business, I sometimes sit and think, this is a real juggling act, right? So again, that's why it's so important. And what we're seeing with more recruitment business, they're recognising that, and they're saying, actually, we need to get in some kind of external support to take some of that strain and pressure as well off of our team leaders, our senior management, right?
Yeah, putting way too much. Yeah. No, there's absolutely a drive towards using specialists now across the board. marketing outsourcing in recruitment is booming right now.
Yeah.
For exactly that reason, rather than just kind of being like, oh, you're good, just post on LinkedIn a bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, so where we're at now, then, I suppose, in sort of the recruitment world is we're in this genesis of change, right? I have a theory that we're now leaving the sort of the decade of the entrepreneur, of people going off and setting up their own businesses to grow, scale, and run an empire. And we're now firmly headed into this decade of the freelancer, where people are now deciding time is more important than money, family and friends, and keeping my kind of my work-life balance and my social life is so much more important than slamming money in the bank, right? I think that's going to positively feed the mental health monster that exists right now. What are your thoughts on kind of the trends that are happening at the moment within our sector and sort of how that's going to impact?
Well, I think you're completely right. I think we're seeing more and more individuals wanting to, run their own kind of freelance opportunity, business, whatever you want to call it, right? Looking for that balance, certain lifestyle, right? Which is great. I think the other contributing factor to that is, do we need, if I think back to recruitment from years gone by, what were some of the biggest indicators of success, right? Biggest indicators of success were how many bodies I had in my business, right? And also how many candidates did I have in my recruitment database? What was the size of my database, right? Those would all impact on valuation, exit potential, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think, there's still some value in that, but I think more and more individuals are now looking at it. Yeah, but actually, I want to manage things in this way to give me that lifestyle. And actually, with the tools that are out there, do I need all these people within my business? And the answer is, you don't necessarily, right? We've got some great tools, Dries and chatbot automation or whatever, lots of great tools out there. We got Pager to help with your marketing that we spoke about earlier. There's all these tools we can utilize to help with efficiency and reach at scale. Right. So we don't necessarily always need
the
as
productivity
many
doesn't need to drop.
No.
And
we don't necessarily need as many bodies to help us with that reach and scale. So I think all of those factors are playing a part in exactly what you said. Those individuals now thinking, actually, there's a different way that I can do this.
I don't need to. So the success is no longer measured by, I went off, I opened up a recruitment business. I started off with me, and then I grew it to 15 people. We were turning over this much. Well, that's all well and good, but
and you know what? That's okay. Some people that still want to do that and do it successfully, great.
Absolutely,
right?
But again, there's less of people. I mean, look, I think the clear indicator was when you've got businesses like Recruitment Entrepreneur, right, who their entire model was exactly that: finding those ambitious recruiters who are sat in recruitment businesses at the moment and providing them that sort of injection and support to grow and scale a portfolio of businesses. When you've got them going, but also we offer a solution now to lifestyle businesses based on the number of inquiries that we had come in, based on the number of people that we would approach and say, this person's really, really good, but it's just not driven by the thought of growing, exiting, and scaling a business.
Exactly.
When a business like that, backed by somebody like James Caan, is going, maybe the lifestyle is the way forward. It kind of makes me sit there and think like, okay, I think I'm on point here. There's a growing demand of 100%. People who are like, I just want my time back. I don't want to do the graft that I have been doing.
100%.
Because, everyone knows where the economy's trash. It's sort of all those kind of measurables and metrics of success that we had as millennials when we were comparing it to our parents and stuff. I had this exact conversation with my mom. Like, those things aren't achievable anymore. Not for most people. So the desire and the want and the motivators have changed.
And also, as we kind of touched on offline, the way people are buying has changed as well, right? Massive, so it's not only, so we've got to think about that when we're looking at what we want to do and how we set up our businesses and how we sell. The way the new generations, consumers, are buying. has changed.
But
as
even
well,
we've
right?
adapted the way we buy.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Even we've done that.
Yeah.
But for some reason in our sector, in our industry, there are we sort of want to go back to basics. Or every time, let's go back to basics. Let's just no, go back to basics. And it's kind of like we don't buy this way anymore.
Yeah.
But you're expecting your prospects to buy in that manner. Why?
Yeah.
Because it used to work. When? A decade ago. Okay. Make that make sense to me. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't, does it? It doesn't.
10 decades ago, like, you know, or 100 years ago, steam engines were all the rage. That doesn't mean you go back to that now because fuel is expensive. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
It's such a ridiculous concept to me. And I argue this all the time on the podcast. I talk to a lot of I do a bit of business mentoring with some startups.
Yeah.
I say to them all the time, look, content marketing and social and all that sort of stuff has to be part of your business development, because there are people out there who are not going to listen to you on the phone call and say, I like the cut of your jib, I'm going to use you. There are people out there who will find you through a Google search, who will do reviews and research on you and through reading your testimonials and your reviews, who will possibly ask people in their network if they know who you are, who will jump on your LinkedIn and have a look at what you're like, who will watch a video or a podcast that you featured on or something you put out, and based on just that information alone, without even speaking to you, will decide, I want this person to do business with me.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't believe me, there are numerous examples of people who have done exactly that and made a good living on just LinkedIn alone. Everyone knows who Benjamin Dennehy is. Not everyone's spoken to him, but everyone knows he's the one to go to, right? Why? That's weird. How did that happen, right? Mike Winner, everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
Not everyone's spoken to him, but everyone's like, oh yeah, that guy knows his stuff. I need to go to him.
It's that personal brand, isn't it? And again, so
that's their business development.
Yeah. And that's been a journey for me, right? Because as I said earlier, and that's where I sit with that social media piece. There's, for some time, for me, there was that social media. I don't like these parts. I don't like this piece of it. I see these challenges with it. But we have to engage in it, right? We have to build our personal brands across it, right? Because that is the way that people are now
buying. Exactly. And you get to deliver a message that they're otherwise not going to hear.
Correct.
You talk about mental health, right? I've changed my views on mental health a lot in the last year and a half, and more so in the last 6 months based on personal stuff that's happened. And literally this weekend, I was talking to one of my nephews who was like, yeah, I've noticed that change in you and stuff he's saying on the podcast. Because I used to be very much kind of like, but, you know, everyone's got issues. No one really gives a shit, whatever. And then through things like my TikTok addiction and things like that, when you start then listening to people talking about it, and, you know, when you've got people that you watch and listen to for entertainment purposes, openly talking about it. So I really enjoy Theo Von. I think he's hilarious. But he does little snippets of where he opens up and talks about his own struggles and stuff. And it's like, oh, that's real. And actually, that's really good because that's reaching me.
And you've resonated with it. You've resonated with it.
That's it. My For You page isn't full of mental health support, but this has found its way to me because this is somebody who I like listening to and watching. And now he's talking about something that means, okay, I like that. Simon Sinek and his, have you heard of his 8 minutes?
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's great. And I was like, if I ever grow and scale out a team again in the future, I'm going to use that because that's really, without saying it, you know. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's that they have an unwritten rule within the team. If you ask for 8 minutes, that's I'm struggling with something. I need to either trauma dump or I'm not in a good place mentally. So rather than, you got 5 minutes, got 2 minutes, got 3, it's 8 minutes. It's a weird number, but everyone then knows, okay, you don't want to disturb them. Let them go off and have their time, right? And I think that's fantastic. But again, I wouldn't have found that because I'm not out there searching. My For You page and my feed isn't full of that sort of stuff. So I think that's where people who, whilst they have a kind of dislike for social media or reservations with social media, that's where you should be using it to reach the audience that you want to reach and actually need your support as a business.
Exactly.
Because everyone who follows you on LinkedIn knows who you are, knows what you do. Everyone who follows your business page on LinkedIn knows who you are, knows what you do. It's through mediums like this and wider kind of activities that people find you, right?
Yeah. And so it's, as we said earlier, it's using those tools in the right way. And this is one of those right ways to use it, right? And I love what you've shared there, because again, I love hearing those stories of an individual that perhaps 6 months, 12 months ago, had certain views around the world of mental health, shall we say. But as we also spoke about offline, but through a combination, and this is the important piece, right? It was a combination of individual impactful experience, but also education and access to information, right? That resonated with you, that then has taken you on a slightly different journey when you think about
which
mental
then
health.
makes you kind of think, oh, okay, maybe, right? Yeah,
100%.
Very few people are very good at kind of self-analyzing and self-critiquing, right? And I it's a flaw of mine, because I'm my own worst enemy with it, and I'm my own biggest critic. But I realised sort of recently that I'm very easily addicted and influenced by things. If I watch something, if I listen to something that kind of is in the right type of tone or whatever, I'll really I like that. That's what I think now, And so a lot of the mental health stuff was and my thoughts on it really were driven by kind of stuff that was spouted by people like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson.
Yep.
Because all the other stuff, or not all the other stuff, but some of the other stuff that they were saying, I was like, I kind of agree with that. And then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that's what I think too, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so important, I think, to have a balance, especially on social media, of what you're listening to and what you're taking in.
Yeah.
So you can make it. I don't think we as kids are taught to critically evaluate and critically think for ourselves.
Correct.
I think that's a skill that more people need to. You talk about preventative measures. I do think that that's probably a skill that people need to
100%,
work on.
100%. So much work needs to be done at that young age, right, in terms of giving certain skills to help them understand how to digest this information, what information to digest. It also aligns with their values, right?
Yeah.
It's about also, I'm speaking to a fantastic lady at the moment, right? And she's working on a great project around kids' mental health specifically, and specifically around values, resilience, right? And she's looking at the hero's journey, right? How can we help people at a young age also identify who their heroes are, right? And therefore, how do they start to adopt some of those values they see in their heroes, and how do they take it through their childhood into their adult years as well? Right. And I absolutely love that project.
I like that. I'm doing a lot of stuff at the minute with my the businesses that I'm mentoring and stuff around kind of their social impact and kind of the content stuff they're doing. And the biggest thing that I picked up on straight away was like they think it's like an overnight thing. Like I put out like the post today of the hockey stick of 6,200 as of like filming today subscribers on YouTube. Sounds fantastic, and it is the biggest channel in the recruitment podcast game. Yeah. But January, it was 2,000. Like there was a lot of kind of not much happening until it took off, right? Yeah. And that's the bit that people don't see. They don't see that bit. They just see I want that. Yeah. How do I get to that? Yeah. Right? I do it with my kids all the time. Like, oh, Daddy, can I make a YouTube video? And I said it was really funny over this. We did it over the half term, and I was like, oh, okay, go on then. What do you want to do? She's like, we can bake a cake. And I was like, okay, cool. So I set the camera up, and she was like starting to do it, and she's sort of talking to the camera, and I'm like, this is so cute. And then she was like, oh, Dad, I got that wrong. And I was like, no, you got to keep filming. Yeah. And then once it's filmed, then we've got to put it into an application. We've got to go through it. We've got to overlay the audio. We've got to take out the bits that don't make sense. Yeah. Then we've got to do this. So I was like, there's about 6 or 7 hours worth of editing that's going to go into this before it's even ready to go on YouTube. Yeah. She's like, what? I thought they just recorded everything and they just put it out. Yeah, it's like that. Exactly. That's what people think. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this. So if you want if you're going to idolize that, which is great, understand the journey that they have to go on to do that, because then you see the hard work that goes in, and then you decide, actually, okay, I like this person not only for the content they put out, but the hard work and dedication it takes to get to that point. Yeah, 100%.
Love that. Love it.
So there you go. Right. So tell us about Emplomind. What are you guys doing at the moment? Is there anything that you want to plug? Straight to the camera. This is your chance to do so.
Thank you. So at Emplomind, I'll share very briefly what we do. Right. Yes, we work with recruitment businesses. We also work with tech businesses. But really, what we're doing is we go into the workplace and we do two things. We educate, and we spoke a lot about education today, right? So we might go in and we might do mental health first aider training, helping their people in the workplace to open up a conversation, have an empathetic conversation, spot the signs of someone struggling, and then signpost to relevant support, right? So we do things like that. We also do certain webinars, workshops on specific themes. So for example, we've got Mental Health Awareness Week coming up in May. We'll be pretty busy doing workshops and webinars for organisations across that week, for example. That's kind of one part. The key part of what we do is through our technology, we facilitate connecting individuals in the workplace with our pool of therapists, counsellors and coaches, right? And we have got and are growing one of the most diverse pools globally, right? Because actually one of the challenges we help people with is that challenge that we touched on during this, right? Of, oh my goodness, I've got these diverse pool of people now in my business, but how do I support all of them and their unique needs, right? And some of that you need to outsource for external support and experts. And that's where we step in, right? So whether that be supporting from a counselling and have BACP and approved specialists and people trained in CBT, humanistic, whatever it might be.
None of those things make any sense to me right now. But
perfect, we'll touch on these later. But we've got individuals with the various tool sets that are going to support your unique individual needs, also based on demographics such as ethnicity, gender, etc.
Great.
Right. So that in a nutshell is what we're doing. We're doing a lot of work at the moment as well on neurodiverse talent and ensuring that organisations can better support and really unlock the talent and potential of their existing neurodiverse talent, right? Because but also really importantly, ensuring that they are attractive to neurodiverse talent, right? We know that, as an example, I think it's 30% of people with autism who have got some amazing skills and capability are unemployed. And we talk about a skill shortage. There's these pools of talent out there that we're not tapping into. So,
there's also a lot of undiagnosed
people
who are then misunderstood within an educated workforce, right?
Exactly.
Comes back to that judging an ability, a fish's ability to swim by its ability to climb a tree kind of thing. Yeah.
So that's a real key topic because we believe there's a great opportunity for organisations to do better and more there.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's wicked stuff. That's great stuff. And if you want people to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch? You're quite active on LinkedIn.
Connect with me on LinkedIn. Get reasonably active on there. Getting better thanks to this opportunity today, right? Reasonably active on LinkedIn, and you can go to www.emplomind.co.uk.
Amazing, mate. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. Really good.